Sometimes doesn't it just feel like God is so far away, just a million miles from your life and what you are dealing with? You've bills to pay and no money to pay them with. Your spouse is ill. Your mental health is playing up. You're slogging away down here in the mud and the grime, and it is hard, really hard. You believe and trust in God. You know his promises for you and for all. You know the forgiveness that was won for you by Jesus on the cross. You know all that. But right here and right now, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel tangible. Everything is a bit rubbish, and when it comes to your faith, it's there, but it feels like there's nothing to hold on to, nothing to grasp, nothing to hang your hat on. Let's none of us pretend that this has been the easiest year of our lives. Maybe not the hardest, but certainly not the easiest. But there may be harder times will come in 2022. I don't know. It's possible. So what do you do? What can you do? Well, in our passage today, we have Jacob, who when we catch up to him is feeling much this same way. Now, when we catch up with Jacob, he has recently, along with his mother Rebekah, tricked Esau out of his birthright and blessing, taking them for himself. And this properly angers Esau. He is raging at the injustice of what has happened to him, and his plan is to wait until their father is dead and then murder Jacob, his brother. As we heard last week, Rebekah notices this and convinces Isaac to send Jacob away to Jacob's uncle Laban. And in our reading today, we catch up with Jacob partway along that journey. But let's have a little think about how Jacob is feeling. He knows the promises that God has for him. The promises to Abraham and to Isaac are now for him. He knows this. But right now, he is on the run from his own brother, leaving his family and all that he has ever known behind. And here he is in verse 11, using a stone as a pillow. Life is hard for Jacob right now. He's learning that his actions have real consequences. Those promises of God must feel so far away from him. Abandoned, lonely, sad. Nothing tangible to grasp onto. And there on the dusty floor with a rock as a pillow, Jacob goes to sleep, where he has a dream. He dreams of a ladder stretching up to heaven with angels ascending and descending. And there at the very top is the Lord God. And God has a message for Jacob. And what a message it is. Verse 13 and 14 here is a reiteration of those promises given to Abraham and Isaac. We can see the same three core pillars that were promised to both his father and grandfather. Land, we read here, the land on which you lie, I will give to you. A promise of descendants, your offspring, God says to Jacob, shall be like the dust of the earth. They're going to spread west, east, north, south. As someone who is not the biggest fan of cleaning, let me tell you, you don't have to wait long for there to be loads of dust about. Land, descendants, and blessing. In you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. For Jacob, this is a confirmation that the promises God made are for him. No matter what wrongs or evils he did to his brother and his family, those promises are still for him. Those promises stand. This is God meeting with Jacob in order to confirm the promises to Abraham and Isaac are for him as well. And this matters massively to Jacob. In the middle of the hardest time of his life, when he is at his lowest ebb, feeling abandoned, lonely, sad, feeling like God is a million miles away. God comes and says, you are not forgotten, Jacob, and you are not alone. Let me read verse 15 for us again. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. You can see why it matters. You can almost feel yourself the effect it would have had on Jacob. I've been struggling with the word for it. It heartens him, it encourages him. These are true, but it doesn't quite grasp the scope of what we're talking about. It's going to hearten to such a massive degree that I kind of think there should be another word for it. If there is, my vocabulary isn't up to the job of capturing it, apart from to say something like it massively, massively heartens him. Jacob, lying on the dusty ground with his rocky pillow, friends, family, home left behind, all on his own. You are not alone. I am with you, says God, and I always will be. I am not letting you go. There is a word for what this is, a word that often comes with an adjective attached to convey its size. The word is grace, amazing grace. It is a grace that is undeserved. Jacob has proven himself through the previous chapters to be a liar and a cheat. He takes things into his own hands. He is what I would describe as a bad guy. And he has done nothing in his life to deserve this sort of faithfulness from God. Nothing. And yet it is his. It is a grace that is unconditional. God doesn't say, I am with you unless you do something else stupid and then you're on your own. It's not, I am with you for the next 30 days, but after that I've got some other stuff I need to be getting on with. There is nothing hiding in the small print here. In the words of the Ron Seal adverts, this does what it says on the tin, I am with you. And it is a grace that is freely given. Jacob pays nothing for this. There is no upfront costs, no monthly payments, nothing at all like that. This is pure grace, amazing grace for Jacob. I think it's fascinating that he wasn't looking for it either. Jacob is busy running from the consequences of his own actions, and God comes along and shows him grace. You are not alone, Jacob. I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. It's massive. Jacob's response shows us just how massive it is, and there are two parts to it. It doesn't leave him unmoved, does it? He wakes up and he is rightly amazed and afraid. How awesome is this place, he says in verse 17. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And he gets up and he worships in his own way. That's the first part of his response, worship. He takes his rocky pillow and he builds a pillar, making it a sacred stone. He pours oil on it. Now that may not be how I or you would worship. We're more with the singing praises and stuff. But make no mistake, that is what Jacob is about here. God has come to him and shown him amazing grace. And Jacob bows down in worship. Worship is the first part of Jacob's response. The second we see in verse 20 to 22, where Jacob responds with a vow by making a commitment to God. If you're really going to look after me like this, God, then I need to give something back. And in thanks, in response, I'm going to give something back. For Jacob, we see that comes at the end of verse 22. Of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. I'm going to give back. I'm going to work for you. It's actually quite a change for him. Up until this point, every time we've seen him, he's been all about gathering things for himself, making his own nest bigger and better. Jacob looked out for Jacob, with all the care of who harmed along the way of a Super League club owner. But Jacob is putting his actions here where his heart is. Through the worshipping, we can see his heart is with God. And here he promises his actions will follow suit. So that's Jacob, feeling far from God, feeling far from everyone, and then God shows him amazing grace. We spoke a bit at the beginning how we might be feeling similar to Jacob. We know God's promises, but the hard reality of life could be dragging us down. God feels so far away. For Jacob, Bethel was what made all the difference. In this place, God came to him and showed him the ladder with angels ascending and descending, here at Bethel. Now listen to something Jesus tells Nathanael in John chapter 1, verse 51. Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angel of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Sounds familiar, huh? We aren't Jacob. I mean, we could go to Bethel. It exists in the West Bank. There's a little disagreement about whether it's the village of Beitan or Albira. They're very close to each other. It's somewhere there. If we go and try to sleep on the ground with a rock for a pillow, it's unlikely anything would happen. We don't have that Bethel. We have a better Bethel. You may have noticed in verse 19, it's Jacob that names the place Bethel. Bethel meaning house of God. Temple would be another word for it. The house of God where God meets his people, where God's presence is on earth. We don't have one. We aren't Jacob. We don't have our own Bethel. We have a better Bethel than Jacob could even imagine. It's no longer in a place that God reveals himself, but it is in his Son, Jesus. Bethel is obsolete for the same reason the temple in Jerusalem is obsolete. They've been superseded. Now, as you may be aware, I myself am a fan of video games. Back at the beginning of November, I bought myself a PlayStation 5. It's pretty nice. Before that, I had a PlayStation 4. How many times would you reckon, since November, since I got the PlayStation 5, have I thought, I think I'm going to play a game, and I've gone and turned on the PlayStation 4 instead of the 5? None. Zero. Not once. Why? Because the 4 has been superseded. The PlayStation 5 plays all the games and does all the stuff that my PlayStation 4 does. The 5 does it better and does some things that the old one can't do. So why would I want to go back to the 4? The PlayStation 5 is the better console. Jesus is the better Bethel. And because it's in Jesus and not a place, that means that for me and for you, there is now nowhere we can be cut off from God. Everywhere we go is the house of God and the gate of heaven, as Jacob puts it. Everywhere. Here in church, at home, on your sofa, down at Wembury Beach, even Primark on a Saturday afternoon. So when we feel like Jacob, we just need to turn to Jesus, because Jesus is the better Bethel, the final temple. In Jesus, mankind is restored to God. In Jesus, we are shown the amazing grace, just like that is given to Jacob. Grace that is undeserved, grace that is unconditional, grace that is freely given. It is Jesus who is there to hearten us and encourage us when we need it. Jesus who takes away our sins and connects us and restores us to God. Jesus who enables us to have a true and real relationship with God. Not just in the future, not just in that glorious day when we see him face to face. Through Jesus, God is with us now. That's what the ladder centered on the Son of Man shows us in John chapter 1. Grace given us today, here and now, whatever else is going on in our lives. As we heard in Great is Thy Faithfulness that we sang at the beginning of this service, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. His promises stand. God's promises stand, both for the future, but also in the here and now. His love is real now, today. The last words of Matthew's Gospel, Matthew 28:20. Behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Amazing grace, undeserved, unconditional, freely given. That is what we have. So what's our response? Or what should it be? Well, I'm sure it'll shock you to hear that it's going to be very similar to Jacob's, isn't it? So let's remind ourselves what that was. The first thing Jacob did was to worship God. Are we worshipping our Lord both communally and privately? It's been a long time since we were able to sing praises together, hasn't it? I feel it more every time it's my group's week in church. Once I'm done, we're going to be having Amazing Grace. And I'll be desperate Sunday morning to be singing that. But sadly not yet. In the meantime, we can be listening to worship music in our headphones and whatnot. I use Apple Music myself. Other streaming services are available. I know Spotify is very popular. And both of those, in fact all the streaming services I believe, have loads of worship music we can load onto our phones of all kinds of styles and genres. There are even playlists that have been ready-made for you to jump in so you don't have to do it yourself. If you aren't quite ready for a streaming service, you can always go old school, get a CD or a vinyl, depending how old school you are. They exist. Actually, I'm not sure if vinyl does, but CDs definitely do. You can order one online, give it a spin while you're peeling spuds for dinner. I'm not the world's biggest fan of songs of praise, but it's there, and the music portion is never my issue. They even put the words right there on the screen for you to sing along with at home. And equally in our prayers, are we worshipping God and praising God in our prayers? I saw a cartoon on a friend's Facebook the other day of the prayer sorting department, and there was a desk with 2 trays. One was marked please, the other was marked thanks. The please tray was overflowing with a massive tower of paper, whereas the thanks tray had like 2 sheets in it. Passes the ring of truth test, doesn't it? It's noticeable, I think, that in the Lord's Prayer, the template Jesus gives us for prayer starts with a chunk of praise. Hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's about a third of that prayer, I would say. Do your prayers, do my prayers, do our prayers reflect this? If not, and you're wondering where to start, may I suggest having a browse of Psalms for inspiration. Psalm 8 is a particular favourite. How do we respond to the amazing grace we are given? We respond in worship, but we also need to respond in action. Jacob starts tithing, giving 1/10 of what he receives back to God. It's a good model and one that many people may follow. Again, if you're looking for a place to start, it works, but it isn't for everyone. Some might be able to give way more than that, and it'll be right for them to do so. Some may be far less than 10%, and for them that is also right. But the principle of putting your money where your heart and mouth are, we see here. But it's not prescriptive. It's not the only way to give back to God. Serving in some way would fall, I think, into the same category of giving back. There's a giving back of time, energy, and love. There's a note this week in the church newsletter that gets emailed out. We are looking for people who can come and mow the grass here at church. That is a good and a viable response to the amazing grace of God. Jesus has done so much for me. What can I do? I can make the grass look awesome and attractive, and through that contribute to the witness of St. Matthew's Church, to the work of God in Elberton, to help to reach out to our community. Sunday clubs, mini movers, cleaners, tea and coffee servers when we're allowed. Something else entirely. I don't want to give you the impression that it's money or doing stuff, though. As if you don't want to do things, you can pay your way out of it. Don't let me give you that impression. That ain't true. But it's asking the question that Jacob implicitly asks. God has done so much for me. He's given me this amazing grace. What can I do to thank him and worship him for that? How can I thank my God for what has been done for me? Jacob left his home under a cloud of anger and betrayal. And for nothing but grace, God takes that cloud away and shows Jacob his great love for him, his great faithfulness for him, his amazing grace. God isn't far away. He is right here. Through Jesus, we are connected with him. Jesus, who is with us always. We are not alone. Our next song is all about the amazing grace we've talked about this morning. And I'm sure it'll come as very little surprise to you that we are going to sing Amazing Grace.